to getting aid into the Gaza Strip through every possible means, whether by land, air, or sea. The creation of the maritime pier was helped to address this situation. Despite weather-induced limitations, nearly 19 million pounds of assistance, including food and shelter supplies, entered Gaza through the pier. This is equivalent of enough assistance to feed 450,000 people for 1 month. The platform was helpful in allowing more aid to enter Gaza, both directly via the pier and through the Ashdod port, and demonstrated the value of having enhanced communication and coordination between the United States, the Israelis, and humanitarian organizations to improve deconfliction mechanisms. This coordination cell, which supported humanitarian maritime operations, has demonstrated that ongoing coordination between multinational and humanitarian organizations is vital. It is vital to the efforts to improve aid worker safety. In turn, creating a safer environment for aid workers will help humanitarian partners get assistance to people in the greatest need across Gaza. This model of coordination has now been agreed upon by the government of Israel and to be extended to all of Gaza. This new process will allow for safer movement of aid deliveries through all crossings, to include the vital land crossing we desperately need to be fully operational. The needs in Gaza are staggering, and the humanitarian conditions in Gaza are unacceptable, and very significant challenges remain for delivering sufficient life-saving humanitarian assistance to Gaza, including the closure of multiple land crossings, insecurity, and logistical and capacity constraints. From the early days following October 7th, the President, the Secretary of State, and the U.S. government worked to open crossings and to facilitate humanitarian assistance, and we will continue to press for the conditions to ensure the safety of humanitarian actors and activities, open additional land crossing, remove impediments to the delivery of humanitarian aid, and do far more to prevent the innocent loss of lives and the killing of innocent civilians, including, of course, humanitarian workers. We know that more aid needs to get to civilians in Gaza, which is why we are continuing to work around the clock to broker a ceasefire agreement that would allow for a massive surge in aid to all in need and to see the hostages come home. So with that, Matt, I am happy to dive into your questions.
Just on the pier, so is it the view of the State Department that this initiative was cost effective?
Matt, we believe that this was a successful initiative. It was able to provide.
It was successful. I mean, delivering one loaf of bread would make it a success, but was it cost effective?
In terms of the technical breakdown, Matt, I'm sure my colleagues at the Department of Defense would be happy to speak to that. I know, are briefing in a little bit later this afternoon. But what I can say is that we believe that this effort was successful, and specifically because the pier and its existence and the work that happened through it impacted aid delivery to northern Gaza. It successfully delivered millions of pounds of aid to the people who need it, nearly 19 million, as I mentioned. And its use helped overall the increased flow of aid and alleviate conditions in northern Gaza. Not at all to say that the situation is resolved or conclusive or anything like that, but overall it was a effort that we believe was successful.
Okay, and then just at the very top of what you said over the last 9 months the humanitarian situation in Gaza has been dire. Is it the view of the administration that prior to 9 months ago, prior to October 7th, the humanitarian situation in Gaza was just fine?
No, Matt, not at all. I was, of course, speaking in the context of the months following October 7th. Of course, the Gaza Strip has long been an area that has needed consistent humanitarian access, consistent humanitarian aid, and I didn't mean to imply the otherwise with my comments.
Right. Thank you.
Can I just follow up on the pier?
Can I? Sure.
Yeah,
I'll come back to you, Jenny.
I'll defer to Jenny.
Sure.
But on the pier,
Yeah.
Did it meet its goals? I mean, its goals as defined and so on. You believe that it met its goals? I know you mentioned that it fed 400,000 Palestinians for 1 month. That's 1/5 of the population for 1 month. But that was exactly the intended goal, that it will feed 400,000 Palestinians for 1 month?
Sorry, there was not a technical goal or a logistics or a inflow or a throughput goal. What we are talking about, and when the president announced this at the State of the Union, what we were talking about was a all of U.S. government effort to ensure that we were leaving no stone unturned and that we were looking at the issue of getting more humanitarian aid into Gaza through every angle. That includes land crossings, that includes airdrops, that included this pier option as well. That's what this is about, is us trying to pursue every possible alternative to ensure that we can get humanitarian aid into Gaza. And in that effort, this pier was successful for all the reasons that I laid out. Now, certainly, as I said to Matt, the humanitarian situation in Gaza continues to be dire, and we will continue to work with humanitarian partners, with partners in Israel, partners across the region, to look at what other avenues are at our disposal to get humanitarian aid into Gaza. I believe Ashdod Port will continue to play an important role, especially for aid that is moving through Cyprus. We'll continue to work closely with our partners in Israel and others in the region to do everything we can to get more land crossings open. So this is not at all not at all to say that the humanitarian picture in Gaza is perfect. What I mean to say is that this pier served a purpose. We believe that purpose was successful in what it was able to accomplish, and we will continue to work hand in hand with partners at USAID, at the Pentagon, and the region to make sure that there are other avenues being looked at also.
I defer to Jennifer, then I'll take my turn.
Sure. Jen, go ahead.
Was this aid actually distributed within Gaza, Vedant? Because WFP had to suspend its operations due to security issues, and I know they did a one-off thing to move it all to their warehouses, but was it actually distributed to the people?
My understanding is that there has been, some of the aid has been able to be distributed. I would defer to USAID and humanitarian partners to, again, speak to the specific throughput. But yeah, I don't have any updates on that beyond.
And then the coordination cell you mentioned, when did the Israeli government agree to?
I don't have any specifics on diplomatic engagements on that, Jenny. I will just know that this is separate than the cell that we have talked about previously. When
So this is a new cell?
Correct. This is specifically catered around humanitarian aid and as a outproduct of this pier.
Isn't this something that the Israelis had said they were going to be working on after the deadly strike on the World Central Kitchen convoy?
It's something that we continue to engage on with the Israelis when it comes to ensuring that there's clear coordination. And like I said, this is a separate endeavor than was being talked about then.
Are there any updates on the opening of the Rafah crossing? Where do those discussions
I have no updates for you. Again, we've talked about this before. Obviously, the closure of the Rafah border crossing is a logistical hurdle, but also, we've talked about this before, was an important conduit for humanitarian aid. We're continuing to work and have discussions around that. But broadly, we are doing everything we can to get a ceasefire agreement across the finish line, because we continue to believe that it is the most potent way to get a surge of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip.
And then my last question on Gaza. There was a very disturbing BBC report earlier this week about a man who had Down syndrome, whose mother said he was attacked by IDF dogs and left to die. Does the State Department tracking this report? Have you asked the Israeli government to investigate?
I'm not aware of this specific report, Jenny, and I'd defer to the IDF to speak to it specifically. Broadly, though, not speaking to this specific instance, it has been our clear call that rules of engagement, that protections for civilians be respected and abided by throughout the course of this conflict. But I don't have much about this specific incident, but I'm happy to check. Said, then I'll come to you, Nick.
Yeah, the Israeli Knesset yesterday voted against the Palestinian statehood, ever. Do you have any comment on that? Would that sort of make you adopt a different approach, or would you have like a mechanism to ensure that there is going to be a Palestinian state, despite now it is legislated into law, or will be legislated into law, that no Palestinian state will ever emerge?
So look, Said, I'll let Israeli officials speak to their own legislative chamber and the actions that chamber takes. But the United States is committed to advancing enduring peace and security for Israelis and Palestinians alike. And we believe that the practical and way for that is a two-state solution, a Palestinian state that is standing side by side with Israel. We believe that is the only way to advance an enduring peace, and it is also something that we believe it is in Israel's security. To realize this vision, Israel must be a partner to the Palestinian people and Palestinian leaders. And as we have said before, we will continue to engage Israeli leadership at the highest levels in making this clear.
Yeah, but the Knesset makes the laws for Israel, like our Congress makes the laws for us in this country. So, I mean, with all due respect, if it remains contained to rhetorical commitment, I mean, it doesn't make any difference. Would it make any difference? Is the United States, in other words, willing or able to take some steps to actually make this happen?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that neither you nor I are experts in Knesset law and legislation and things and products that come out of the Knesset, so I will leave that analysis to others. What I can say is that the United States' approach to a two-state solution has not changed. Our prioritization of that has not changed.
So can I just... Sorry. So you have no opinion at all on this?
We certainly have an opinion, Matt.
Okay,
what I don't have is an analysis.
What is it?
Our opinion is that we believe that a two-state solution is necessary, not just for Israel's security.
I know what your opinion on a two-state solution is. What's your opinion on the legislation?
I think it can be safely implied that a piece of legislation that is in opposition to a two-state solution is not something that we would be thrilled about. But again, I don't have the expertise or the analysis of this legislation to know what bearing it would have on the overall process. What I can say, though, Matt, is that this is something that we're going to continue to engage directly with Israeli leaders on. We believe that this is the direct and most credible and real path forward for Israel's security to get the region out of an endless cycle of violence. And that's why we have continued to call on a two-state solution being a cornerstone of every iteration and conversation that we have when we talk about the future of this region and the future of the Israeli and the Palestinian people.
Okay, but I'm just, it's interesting to me that you don't want to come out, you wouldn't come out and say, right, this off the top in response to the first question, that this is something that you oppose, and that
this is not,
because I can recall less than 2 months ago, you guys weighing in very significantly on Georgia's parliament passing a law that you didn't like, on Uganda's parliament passing an anti-LGBTQ law that you didn't like, and there was no reticence at all,
Matt,
for you guys to call it out. And now it's like pulling teeth to get you to say something.
I don't think it's like pulling teeth. This is something that my understanding is just passed earlier today or within the past 24 hours. What the full contents of this legislation are, I certainly haven't had time to read it. I can't imagine Said or you have either, Matt. Correct me if I'm wrong. That being said, our long-standing position on a two-state solution is quite clear, and we believe it continues to be the only way to advance enduring peace. And it's something that we have made clear with Israeli officials across its government, and it's something that we will continue to make clear across.
All right, fair enough. But I don't think that you can cite chapter and verse of the Georgia law or the Uganda law either. So don't, you throw it back and say, well, you haven't read it. We know what's
Matt,
the essential outline, which is basically what you knew about the two laws that I just mentioned in other countries.
These are different circumstances, different countries. I think these are a little bit apples and oranges.
The point is that you are not shy about weighing in on other countries' legislatures' decisions or votes.
And in this case, we are not shy about making clear that how vital we believe a two-state solution to be about being the only way for an enduring peace. Nick's patiently been waiting.
I have a couple more questions. I'm sorry,
I will come to okay, all right, go ahead, Said.
But I just want to ask you a couple more.
Yeah.
The Mossad leader, the Israeli intelligence leader, said that Netanyahu is really intent on thwarting any deal. Do you have any comment on that? Did you hear the Mossad chief, what he said, and so on?
So for obvious reasons, Saeed, I'm not going to negotiate or speak about the deliberative process from up here. What I can say is that we're working to get a deal. We're working to get a ceasefire and bring the hostages home, and we continue to believe a diplomatic resolution is achievable and urgent. We're hopeful about the direction that things are progressing in, and we believe, as I said, something is achievable. But I'm not going to get more specific or offer commentary beyond that.
But Mr. Barnea, the head of the Mossad, is the guy who is really heading the negotiations. So he knows. He knows exactly what's going on. He knows that his prime minister is not allowing him to go forward with the deal. You don't have a comment on that?
I'm just not going to negotiate on this process in public, Said. That would be unhelpful to the process. What I can say is that we are hopeful about the direction that things are progressing in. We believe a deal is both achievable. It's something that we have been working around the clock. It's an urgent priority for Secretary Blinken, and this is something that we're working to get across the finish line. But I don't have more for you. Anything else on the region before I let Nick go? I will let them speak to any of his engagements. What I can say broadly about the efforts to get a ceasefire, as I said when answering both Matt Lee and Saeed's question, is that we are continuing to work this around the clock. We think that it is a vital step that's necessary to do everything we can to get the region out of endless cycles of violence. It will be irreplaceable in surging humanitarian assistance into Gaza, and it will be critical to making sure that all of the hostages are released as well.